Welcome back, everybody. In this lesson, we are going to be writing our first karate test. I hope you are all excited. The first thing, however, is a quick overview of the setup that I'll be using. I'm using this website, typicode.com. Uh, this website provides some pretty useful but fake APIs, and I'm going to be using these APIs as my backend. This is the same URL, same website, which is also used by the sample feature file that came with the Karate installation itself. I'm also going to be using the same because I found it very useful. Uh, the first thing, let me go and show you that website. You see here that it exposes these endpoints: posts, comments, albums, photos, to-dos, and users. So along this tutorial, I'll be using these resources. Uh, Other thing that I wanted to show was some of the useful extensions that you could use if you're developing in VS Code. One is this Cucumber plugin. Uh, the most important thing here is it helps you to autocomplete some of the Gherkin keywords. It basically will help to speed up your development process. And another useful plugin that you could use is this karate plugin. Again, it color codes some of your karate keywords. It beautifies your responses and things like that. So these two are pretty useful plugins that you could use for your development. These are not mandatory, but it will enhance your development process. All right, let's get going. Uh, the first thing that we would do here is, I think the best way is we start by mimicking what is already there. In this case, there is already an example service that we looked at last time. In our case, let's say the first thing that I would want to test is the posts. So let me go and overall, I think if you look at this endpoints, posts, comments, albums, it looks like a social media kind of a service. So let me call my package as, let's say, my social. And just like so, this has parallels with the examples package here. And just like the way examples package had examples test.java, I'm going to create a Java test runner file for my social and call it my social test.java. What else can I do? I can just copy paste the whole thing and put it here because some of it is already there. Let me just pick up the stuff that I want. I want all the imports. Package is already there. The class is already there. I'll just take this function and I think good to go. Let me save this. One other thing is so this test runner would look for feature files inside class path, and inside class path it will look for folders for examples, but in my case this should be my social now. So that is it. And let me also, I don't need uh, parallelism at this point in time. I'll change it to 1, so there'll be only one thread running the tests. I think that is all. All right, I think we are good to start writing our first feature file. I wouldn't be creating subfolders inside, like in the case of the sample test, there were subfolders inside the main folder. I would be creating my feature file at the same level. So let me first start by creating a sample feature file. Let me call it posts.feature because I'm going to be testing the posts API in this case. Uh, the first thing that you would write in a feature file is the name of the feature itself. This just identifies a feature is basically a logical container for all the related tests that you're going to be writing. Each test is a scenario in itself, and the collection of all these scenarios is what constitutes a feature. So each dot feature file would have a feature heading to identify that what follows is a test for a particular feature. In this case, I'm going to be testing the post API. So let me just say verify post API for my social, right? Any useful command that suits your use case. The next important keyword here is the background. Background is where you would initialize or define any variables or initialize certain things before you want to run your tests. So just sort of like pre-test config or scripts that you would want to run. This is the place you want to do it. In my case, in this case right now, I don't want any initialization to be done, so I'll just leave it as a command. I'll say initialize stuff and leave it as it is. I won't be doing defining any variables or running any functions as yet. We will come to it at later point in time. Next is the scenario itself. This is the real test that is going to be run. So the first thing I want to run is, if you look at this API, if I call this API, it's basically the base URL and then the post as the path, and uh, it returns an array, and that is what I'm going to verify as in my first test. So I'm going to just say verify slash posts returns let's say slash post works. All right. As we have seen earlier, Karate uses the Gherkin syntax. Uh, so the highlight of Gherkin syntax is given when then keywords. So we'll start with that. Given a particular URL, and when I call get method on that URL, then I expect a 200 status back. So this is the most basic test that you could write. If we could just replace the right URL in there. So in this case, this was our URL, and I think that is all. So if you are given this URL, if you call a get on it, you are expecting a 200 response. And let me go and run this. This, let's say ambient test. What happened? It says my social 15. What did we do wrong? Oh, there's a missing bracket here. Let me run it again. And there we go. It ran two tests because it also ran the examples package. Let me go ahead and clean that up. And the other thing I wanted to show was instead of running it through the command line, because of the plugin, you could also run it from here. You could run at either at the feature level, in which case it will run all the scenarios inside this feature file. For now we just have one, or you could just run the particular scenario. In this case, I'll just run this scenario, and you see the plugin is color coding the response, etc. And you see it one test ran and one test passed. So that is it. You just wrote your first basic test, and congratulations. What else can we do? Uh, well, we know that you look here, it says it will return 100 posts. Well, we could verify that. Could also say whenever you have multiple things in a given context, you could just say and. So in which case, it will not only check that the status is 200, it will also check whatever else that follows. In our case, what we want to assert is the response. Response is a special keyword here. It will contain the response for the API that you just ran. In this case, it will now hold the posts array. And what I want to verify at this point is the array has 100 objects in it. So I could say uh, response.length equal to this is for assertion. So assertion will verify the expression that follows the assert keyword, whether it is true or false here, and assertion will pass if it is true. In this case, we are saying if the response, the length of the array, because response is an array, uh, if that response is 100, then assertions will pass, otherwise assertion would fail. And let's go ahead and run this and verify if it passes. So it does pass. Just to ensure that the tests are really passing, let me just say that we expect 99 object, whereas we know that it returns 100, in which case assertion should fail. As a result, the test should fail. And let me go ahead and uh, run this, and you see one test ran and one scenario failed. That is because this step here that failed. You could also at any point in time go to this report and see exactly which step failed. And here you could see, this is the evaluation did not uh, fulfill, and it basically failed. Let me revert it back to 100. What else can we check? There is a special, uh, let's say, if we could just like I scroll up here. Uh, You see, it took around 236 milliseconds for the API to respond back. Maybe we could test that. Maybe we are interested in measuring the response time. But one way we could do that is, again, we can assert saying response. I think it is a response time is, let's say, of course it will not be 236 every time, it could vary, but you want to ensure that it is always below, let's say, 1 second. Your API always responds within 1 second. Then you could write here the number that follows the response time is in milliseconds, so 1 second would be around would be exactly 1000 milliseconds. So what you're saying is the response time should always be less than 1 second, and again you can assert on that. Right, so it passed. So this is one pretty uh, useful keyword around response that you could use in your tests. I don't think this API sets any cookies, but what we could do is we can also, I can just print if there is any cookie which is set by the server. So instead of yeah, and you could also write the star. It works the same way. Uh, if I run this, did I do wrong? Oh, I think I missed the S there. And like I said, there are no cookies sent by the server. Cookies are something that a server sends, and useful when browser makes another call to your backend. It sends the cookies back to the server that had set them in the first place. In this case, the server did not set any cookies, but if there were, uh, you could basically use them. If you could, let me just show you on the karate file itself. So if you look at this section gives you pretty much multiple things that you could do with your response. So we just looked at response time. We will be looking at response in detail. We'll also be looking at response header. But the topic that I was currently looking at was response cookies. And this is how you could, I could not assert on my cookies just yet because there was no cookie set by my this fake backend. But if there were, you can use this way. So you'd say response cookies. Typically, a server would set a particular time for which the cookie, for which the data should be valid, the set by server, and you can say that time as a key exists and there is some value associated with it. So this is how you could use the response cookies. Uh, Next thing that we will look at is the response headers. Uh, so response headers. Before that, just take a quick look. Uh, na, na, na. If you see here, and let me just, so this is the request that we sent, a get request to this path, and these were the request headers, and in response we got 200 success. That is one of the assertions that we make. And then these are the response headers, and followed by the response body. Now let's say if we wanted to verify that our let's say the content type is application JSON and char security of 8, we could do that as well. So it is not just that we could assert on the body, but we could also verify the headers sent by the API. So the way to do that is this is basically a map, and to access a map, what you would do is you would say you would give the key, which in this case is content type, and so you're saying content type, and what this returns is this key returns uh, not a value, but it's basically an array of values. So it's an array of string. So in this case, we are only interested in the first uh, value. I think an ideal way would be just to print this first and then uh, make an assertion. So let me just print this and see what it returns. So I hope I've spelled everything correctly. And if I run this, you see it has returned this. And what we could do is we could assert on this. In fact, in this case, it will be a match. So the difference between a match and an assert is assert just evaluates if the expression that follows is true or false. Match is where it will actually match character by character. And in most cases, you would be using a match keyword rather than assert. Match could do almost everything that assert does, but the vice versa is not true. So in this case, we will be using match. And now if I just run this test again, there you go. You have now not only validated the response status, but you have also looked at the response time. Response time, this is a network thing. It's not part of the response or HTTP itself, but it's part of the transport. But that's a good part is that you could also put a validation on the time also. Next, you also validated the length of the response. In this case, because it was array, we could do that. And you could do assertions on the response headers also. So you can see it's not only the body, but you could on multiple other thing aspects also you could do the validations on. The next scenario that we are going to test is one specific post. So if you go back to this and you look at this, we just tested this get on the posts API, but you could, which returns all the 100 posts that are available on my social, which are posted by all the users. You could also instead get detailed information about one post. And in this case, this is the post ID, this is the user who posted that post, and the title and the body. And we are going to validate this API now. So again, I can just copy paste this for now. Let's see this verify slash post. I'll say slash underscore UID because this could change. Verify that this particular thing works. And let me just remove this for now. All right, now you see we are using the same URL, but in this case, I will be using something like this, right? Or maybe if I were to look for the first post, I'll be using something like this. And there can be many other scenarios that follows, which would be using the same base URL. In this case, base URL is something that I can define in the background, and when background is something that runs before every scenario runs. So your background would run first, then this scenario would run. So and it would run all the assertions which are as part of this scenario, then before running the next scenario, your background code will run again. So whatever is defined in background would get initialized again before the next scenario runs. So in this case, what we are going to do here is we are going to say, given the URL, we are going to take out this base URL out from the scenario and put it inside the background. And this is not a URL anymore, but what you want this is to be a path that needs to be appended ahead of the I mean behind the main URL. So what you could do is you don't have to put the slashes, and in this case now it is not a URL anymore, but it's a path. So when this thing runs, it will take this as the URL. Because it knows this is the path, it will append the slash, and then this path would be appended, and it would be same as earlier, but it is more readable now. So in this case, the path would be post/1, and because the background would run before the next scenario, it would form the right endpoint path. I think I've got it. Let me just run this. Yeah, there we go. I think it works. In order to prevent this video from getting too big, I will continue in the next video. I'll see you there. Thank you.